Sedation. You wanna feel at home, 'cause you belong. Welcome to my nightmare. Welcome to my breakdown. I hope I didn't scare you. That's just the way we are when we come down. We sweat and laugh and scream here, 'cause life is just a dream here. You know inside you feel right at home here. Welcome to my breakdown. You're welcome to my nightmare, yeah.
Dare to enter a world of fear with no way out. Face California's fastest and scariest indoor roller coaster.
Your souls belong to me!
Revenge of the Mummy, The Ride. Coming summer 2004 at Universal Studios Hollywood.
The date is June 25th, 2004. Crowds flock to the lower lot of Universal Studios Hollywood to experience the brand new attraction the park has just unveiled, Revenge of the Mummy, The Ride. A thrilling, high-speed indoor roller coaster centered around the plot of the 1999 Universal blockbuster hit. The attraction, which opened a month after the ride premiered at the Orlando park, brought to life some of the best aspects of the film, seamlessly blending the thrilling action with its darker horror elements. The first of its kind in both parks. Part dark ride and part indoor roller coaster, the attraction was an instant hit which still sits in both parks to this day. Significantly for Universal Studios Hollywood, the attraction reignited interest in the idea for themed horror-based attractions in more ways than one, with the park already dipping its feet into the haunts sphere at this time with its also recently debuted Van Helsing Castle Dracula walk-through attraction, which opened priorly in May of 2004. The idea for more of this kind of entertainment was once again at the forefront of the park's plans. And so with the success of the Revenge of the Mummy ride, Universal decided this was the time to strike and set into motion a thorough plan to bring Halloween Horror Nights back to the West Coast. The plan's predominant feature included bringing on board the person who designed the Mummy attraction to helm the project. Working as a part of the Universal creative team at the Orlando park, then lead designer John Murdy received a call from the general manager of Universal Studios Hollywood asking him if he would be interested in resurrecting Halloween Horror Nights at the Hollywood park. Murdy, who was living in Orlando at the time, began his career at the Hollywood park working as a tour guide. From there, he slowly worked his way up the ranks until he landed a position with Universal Creative. Spending 7 years there, Murdy worked on attractions such as Men in Black for the Orlando Park and Sesame Street 3D for Japan, but claimed to always prefer working on attractions for the Hollywood Park. "That's where I grew up. That's where my passion was," Murdy said in an interview in 2006. Growing up in Southern California, Murdy had been visiting the park since 1972, seeing it evolve throughout the years. An avid Universal Monsters fan from a young age, the park proved special to him with its rich history and the development of those movies. So given all that, it's easy to see why Murdy accepted the task to revive the event. After all, haunt production wasn't anything new to Murdy, who had begun designing haunted houses in his parents' garage as a child growing up. So with a new creative director, with a proven track record now in place, Murdy and Universal would work on a new vision for Halloween Horror Nights that would resurrect the event and keep it at the park for years to come.
Nothing compares to real blood on film. It's the only way to really capture the emotion, the fear, the reality of what the victim is feeling. Because it's not just a movie.
After a long 5-year hiatus, 2006 would mark the 4th official attempt at Halloween Horror Nights in Universal Studios Hollywood. Wary about its success, understandably so, 2006 was a sort of trial run for the event. But under the direction of brand new creative director John Murdy, the revival of the event toted grand ideas that would set it apart from all prior iterations. Bringing his experience from working in Universal Creative, Murdy's vision for the event was one where, like the theme park, the event brought to life some of the most popular horror franchises ever and put you right in the middle of them. A formula which we now know would prove to be highly successful. Universal was relatively frugal with it for the 2006 event, a downscaled event that featured only 2 mazes, 5 scare zones, 5 shows, and the return of the Terror Tram. Murdy aimed at making the 2006 event as cinematic as possible. Key in this was the use of the popular icon from the Orlando Park, the director. Renamed to Pavel Pranevsky, Hollywood's version of the director followed a similar backstory to that of Paulo Ravinsky from the Orlando event, a controversial director from Slovakia who became popular for his eerily realistic style of horror films. Pranevsky's production value always seemed a little too real, earning him more critics than fans, leading him to ultimately get sued for carving an actress's eye out in the making of his short film, The Widow's Eye. Shortly after, Pranevsky was blacklisted from the Slovakian film industry and sailed on to Hollywood in 2002 to continue his artistic aspirations. Eventually, Universal learned about the director after being unable to secure names like Rob Zombie and Clive Barker to work on Halloween Horror Nights, and, in spite of all the rumors, hired him to create the ultimate horror film, which would inspire the revamp of the event. Incredibly enthused about the idea, Pranevsky got to work immediately, touring the back lot and plotting scripts for the various attractions that would take place in his film. After production of his film began, he was interviewed for a set of studio dailies during which he claimed that he aspired for true emotion from his actors, stating that nothing could capture true emotion, fear, and the reality of what the victim was feeling like real blood on film. That same day, Universal got a hold of some of the footage Pranevsky was shooting, and what they saw horrified them. A man in a jester costume with hooks impaled on his cheeks. A man being tortured in a bathtub, and a clip of Pranevsky himself examining a corpse with a set of large shears. Universal executives were appalled at the display of literal evil on film and immediately attempted to shut down the production and have Pranevsky arrested. Pavel Pranevsky, however, managed to escape. For months, the search went on with no sight of the director, with many believing he simply found his way back to Slovakia, but they were mistaken. Eventually, Pranevsky was reportedly spotted in various areas of the backlot by guests riding the tram tour, and despite security's best efforts, he could not be located. One day, a videotape arrived at the offices of Universal executives. In the tape, Pranevsky filmed various guests in areas of the park, promising that his work would go on.
I will settle the score with the people at Universal Studios Hollywood. There's nothing that will stop me from creating and filming the most realistic and terrifying Halloween event that Hollywood has ever seen. Nothing.
But despite the threat of the director still being out on the loose, Universal went on with Halloween Horror Nights, even using many of Pranevsky's concepts. On opening night, Pranevsky made his grand reappearance and, with a few of his friends, took control of the entire park, directing scare actors on their acts of carnage and amplifying the scares of the event. The director's film was now in production. The entire event was centered around the idea of Pranevsky's film, with the mazes, shows, and scare zones all being different scenes in his script, with his influence being very much so present in every aspect of the event, tying the whole thing together into one big story you were a part of. Halloween Horror Nights 2006 featured 2 mazes. The first, Universal's House of Horrors, invited you to take a journey into Universal's horror-filled legacy and come face-to-face with some of the most terrifying characters ever created. Characters like Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, and Dracula attacked you as you walked by, with add-on appearances from unlicensed versions of popular contemporary icons such as Freddy Krueger and Hannibal Lecter lurking among them. Nothing new or groundbreaking, the maze held the same concept as the prior Universal monster mazes the event had seen in the 90s, and even sprinkled in the idea of using contemporary characters as some of the prior mashup attractions had done. The attraction was, however, much better received than the ones in the 90s, notably so for the location in which the maze was constructed. Located in the park's permanent daytime walk-through venue, which at the time held the park's Van Helsing attraction, the maze boasted large sets and intricate special effects that the park could afford to splurge on, given that this attraction was a sort of inauguration for a daytime version of it that would open after the event. In the context of the event's story, however, the attraction was still the frozen fortress of Vladislaus from Van Helsing, which the director filled with deranged slashers and icons. Next on the shooting schedule, the Asylum was an original maze based in a high-security hospital for the criminally insane where all the inmates ran amok. The maze bared many similarities to a house from the Orlando event, Psycho Scare Appy, with scenes such as the shock therapy room and padded cells corridor being influenced by it. Once again, nothing new or groundbreaking, yet the maze did stand out with its intriguing set design, elaborate makeup, and surprising intensity. John Murdy designed the scares in the maze with a heavy use of misdirection, distracting the audience with something grotesque. All the while, an actor jumped out at you from somewhere unexpected. The added use of trigger scares, actor-activated effects that triggered loud noises and flashing lights as they emerged from their boo holes, made the attraction one of the most terrifying at the event yet, cementing the style of haunting that Halloween Horror Nights would be known for years to come. The event featured 5 scare zones, marking their return from the 2000 event to the park. Much more thorough and story-driven, The zones utilized the areas they were located in to contribute to their overall story, or in this case, scenes in Pranevsky's movie. Up first, in the park's New York street, located right at the entrance, Dawn of the Dead puts you in the middle of a zombie outbreak, a scene of absolute chaos where the dead have been feasting on the living. Here you'd encounter all sorts of horrifying versions of the undead, from a zombie surgeon to the zombie go-go dancers. Over on the park's western street, Deadwood found you in a ghost town where skeletal inhabitants of the town's most notorious still roam the smoldering streets. A concept similar to that of the long-running ghost town scare zone from Knott's Berry Farm. Moreover, the park's Baker Street was transformed into Old London, where classic favorites such as Dracula in his signature top hat and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde roamed. Next door, French Street became the Black Death Scare Zone, a medieval town where plague-infested villagers crawled through the streets. Lastly, the lower lot saw the Studio Center Scare Zone that saw a bizarre assortment of scare actors including mummies, the infamous Zombie Flasher, Zombie Scarface, and more. Furthermore, the 2006 event featured 5 shows, a couple of which were reused from prior events such as the Carnival of Carnage Freak Show, Chucky's Insult Emporium, and the reskinned SlaughterWorld stunt show now called SlaughterWorld. New for the event, an overlay to the Fear Factor live show titled Fear Factor Dead Celebrity Edition, which saw pop culture celebrities such as Paris Hilton and Michael Jackson competing in a death match. Interestingly enough, this is the only show John Murdy has ever written for Halloween Horror Nights. Also, new nightly shows from the Mutator Band, who performed electric rock music accompanied by impressive stunts. The main attraction for the 2006 event, however, would be the return of the Terror Tram. Completely different from any version the event had featured to this point. The 2006 version, which John Murdy conceived, allowed guests to step off the tram and walk through some of the most iconic sets in movie history, while scare actors terrorized them at every corner. Terror Tram. The director's cut saw the director luring in unbeknownst guests into an open casting call on the Universal backlot. Once on board the tram, guests would learn of the story of Pavel Pranevsky, when suddenly the tram would make a detour onto the Whoville sets, and guests would have to step out and walk through the various sets which were being used for the production of the director's film. Each section of the backlot was themed to different scenes, which the director aptly titled and filled with bloodthirsty maniacs. Whoville, which was covered in black light circus imagery and prowling with various creepy clowns wielding chainsaws, was titled Send in the Clowns, while the Bates Motel saw Pranevsky attempt to shoot a remake of Psycho titled Psychopath. Beauty is only skin deep. What's Cookin' Good Lookin' was a scene which featured a pig-masked scare actor with a chainsaw on the trail up to the Bates mansion, where Norman Bates stalked guests as his mother heckled at him from the window. The centerpiece to the attraction, the famous War of the Worlds plane crash scene, was filled with zombies for a scene titled There Goes the Neighborhood. Back on the tram after yet another attack from the director's chainsaw-wielding minions, Pranevsky's final cut saw you venture into the mummy's tomb, where he killed someone with a wood chipper and eventually tried to chainsaw everyone on board the tram, smaller in scale to the Terror Tram attractions we know nowadays. The pathway saw guests go around the various sets, then actually through them, making it a shorter walkthrough overall. Regardless, the concept of having guests step off the tram and walk among the sets was revolutionary. This idea was effective not only in its theme to the overall event story, but also in placing Halloween Horror Nights on the map. Nowhere else in the world could you go and walk among the sets of famous horror movies all the while actors tried to scare you. And as with its first iteration in 1986, audiences would flock in droves to experience the Terror Tram. Albeit a test year, the 2006 revival of Halloween Horror Nights did everything the studio hoped to achieve with it, and more. Not only was it a success commercially, it was a success symbolically. A success that Universal Studios Hollywood had long longed for. More in tune with its own significant style as spearheaded by creative director John Murdy, and with something in its arsenal to set it apart from any other haunt experience anywhere, the path forward for Halloween Horror Nights was full of promise and untapped potential the studio was anxious to explore.
So what's my future?
You don't have one.
Universal Studios Hollywood presents Jason, Freddy, and Leatherface at Halloween Horror Nights. Get your tickets before it's too late.
Without a doubt, perhaps the most significant year in the event's history would be 2007. A year that would take HHN to new heights as it implemented an idea that had never been seen before at a theme park. Halloween Horror Nights. 2007 was the bloody homecoming of intellectual property-based haunts at the theme park. Taking the idea that had previously been very gently explored in the 90s and at some of Orlando's events of turning the plot of various hit horror films and transforming them into terrifying walk-through experiences. HHN 2007 spared no expense and started this legacy off with a bang. Right off the bat, creative director John Murdy's plans for the 2007 event included bringing in what at the time was referred to as the Big Three from New Line Cinema, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and Leatherface to the event. Three of the most popular and recognizable icons from the horror genre all together under one roof, under one banner, Halloween Horror Nights. Tying the whole event together for 2007, John Murdy decided to borrow yet another icon from the Orlando event to string together a cohesive story that would incorporate all three of these horror giants. Jack the Clown, ringmaster of horror, the most popular out of Orlando's collection of beloved icons, was set to bring his carnival of carnage to Hollywood, and Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface were the headliners. Like the director during the prior year, Jack's story was tweaked in Hollywood in order to fit in with the overall story. For Hollywood's iteration, Jack was a deranged lunatic with an obsession with horror films who took it a step too far. He was actually involved in the director's assault on Universal the prior year, donning a clown costume and stabbing attendees at the park. When the dust settled, Jack was arrested and was deemed insane, ultimately being sent off to the Shady Brook Asylum. Not much was known about the man, Jack Schmidt, who only confessed to a psychiatrist of wanting to follow in the footsteps of some of his favorite movie maniacs. To Jack, every day was Halloween, and he wanted nothing more but to unleash his inner demons on mankind and terrorize the masses. Not even a year in confinement, Jack managed to escape his cell at Shady Brook and sent his psychiatrist a set of postcards from different locations from famous horror films. The Bates Motel, 1428 Elm Street, Camp Crystal Lake, and the Hewitt House. It was then when the psychiatrist was able to piece together Jack's ultimate plan: to take people into these realms and bring them face to face with the actual slashers that abided in them. And to Jack, there was no place that conceived the essence of fright and barbarity necessary to accomplish this like the place where the horror film was born, the Universal backlot, Seeing this as his way to gain supernatural power through the darkness that abided there, Jack announced that he would be holding a carnival that would take place at Universal Studios Hollywood. A carnival that would bring to life some of his heroes from his favorite slasher films, ready to terrorize anybody that stepped foot through the park's gates. As was the case with the event the prior year, the event's storyline translated directly into the Terror Tram, which served as the central attraction for the year. The Terror Tram. Horror Comes Home told guests riding the tram the story of Jack Schmidt and, like the prior year, dropped them off in the Whoville sets on the back lot, forcing them to make their way through a gauntlet of elaborately themed areas filled with scare actors. With each area themed to a different film, as was the case the prior year, guests were met with an onslaught of killer clowns wielding chainsaws as soon as they stepped off the tram. This year, however, instead of walking around the sets, guests walked through them, venturing into the backside of the Bates Motel and out onto its corridors where Norman Bates was waiting for guests with his butcher knife. Up the hill, up to the Bates house, guests encountered the first of Jack's carnival killers in an area themed to Camp Crystal Lake, where Jason and his signature machete stalked the grounds. Further up the hill, a reused set from last year's tram saw guests come face to face with Leatherface and his chainsaw just outside the Bates house. And finally, in the War of the Worlds crash sets, guests witnessed Freddy Krueger tear apart all of Springwood in a nightmare scenario where the razor finger-wielding slasher attacked guests from every angle. Before making it back on board the tram, guests witnessed a horrifying scene as Jack himself chucked a guest into a wood chipper before more of his chainsaw-wielding clown friends appeared. Like the prior year, the attraction utilized Imhotep's tomb to cap off the experience with Jack, sending in an evil Egyptian sandstorm to wipe out any remaining guests on board the tram. Already a highly popular attraction after the positive reception it opened to the prior year, the use of IPs only made the attraction more popular, making it one of the standouts of the year. The main attraction, however, if you will, for the 2007 event was its elaborate mazes themed to the various IPs in Jack's Carnival. HHN 2007 saw 4 mazes. The first was the Universal House of Horrors, which debuted at the event the prior year, but was now a full-fledged daytime walkthrough attraction that took you through Universal's legacy of horror. For the event this year, the attraction remained mostly the same, with the added use of extra scare actors sprinkled throughout. The Overflow Shrek Theater queue line hosted the first out of the 3 IP mazes for the year, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy's Nightmare, which took guests through various scenes from the franchise. The maze began at the Weston Hills Asylum, where Freddy was conceived with the maze reusing the facade from the prior year's The Asylum for the attraction. From here, guests wandered through the asylum, encountering scenes from A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5 before making it out to the Roach Motel from the Dream Master and the infamous boiler room where Freddy attacked from every corner. Using state-of-the-art special effects, Hollywood-level scenic design, and exact replicas of costumes and makeup, the attraction truly felt like a nightmare straight out of the silver screen. Incredibly well-received. Guests who attended loved the idea of getting to walk through the various scenes from the film, all the while Freddy Krueger stalked them at every corner. Moreover, taking a similar direction, the second IP maze for the year, Friday the 13th, Camp Blood, immersed guests in the world of everyone's favorite machete-wielding slasher, taking some of the most infamous scenes and kills from the franchise and bringing them to life in front of you. Guests encountered scenes such as the double impalement scene from Part 2 and the decapitation from Part 6 as they traversed deeper into Camp Crystal Lake, and finally into Jason's mother's shrine. Like with A Nightmare on Elm Street, this maze took the best parts of the franchise and placed you front and center in them, with incredible detail down to the sense as you travel through the woods at night with Jason Voorhees hot on your trail. But out of the 3 IP mazes of the year, without a doubt, the standout attraction would be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Back in business, a maze based off the 2003 remake of the 1974 classic, which pitted guests against the deranged Hewitt family and Leatherface with his roaring chainsaw hellbent on making you into their next meal. The attraction tackled all the major scenes from the 2003 film, starting off at the massive Hewitt house facade, and even sprinkled in some nods to the original here and there. Still to this day, many who attended the event this year claim this to be the scariest house that has ever been featured at HHN Hollywood. It is easy to see why, given how expertly John Murdy placed the scares throughout the maze. Starting slow, building anticipation as you hear a chainsaw off in the distance in the first few rooms, to finally encountering Leatherface, who emerged from a tight corner and held his chainsaw just centimeters away from your face. And with the use of hyper-realistic smells and disorienting lighting, the intensity of the attraction was upped to a level guests had never before seen at a theme park. It was literally as if one was placed right in the middle of the film, and one of the most terrifying and depraved films of all time, that is. Without a doubt, the most popular attraction that year. The maze boasted large wait times, with fans demanding to see more of this type of attraction at Halloween Horror Nights. Full of IP heavy hitters, expertly crafted into terrifying experiences that brought to life some of the most well-known characters in horror. It's not hard to imagine what that did to the overall popularity of the event. This is what Halloween Horror Nights had always been building towards, and this is what they wanted to achieve. And for their first outing with full-fledged intellectual properties, the event was a massive success. In terms of additional entertainment for the 2007 event, HHN featured 4 shows that year, keeping SlaughterWorld, Chucky's Insult Emporium, and the annual Magic Show, but notably swapping Fear Factor for the return of Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. Scare Zones also returned with many of the same concepts as the prior year. A zombie invasion was once again featured in the New York sets, while Western Street saw the return of Deadwood and French Street. The Black Death. Old London also returned in Baker Street, retiled to Haunted London, and now featuring Jack the Ripper and other adjacent characters. The only new scare zone for the year was titled Hellbilly Hoedown, which saw a family of inbred freaks with chainsaws and shovels living in the lower lot. While not much changed in terms of the scare zones in the shows from the prior year, and they didn't appear to be as interconnected to the event's overall story as they were in 2006. HHN 2007 was the biggest year in the event's history to date. So big and such a success that for the 2008 season, the event remained mostly the same, with only a handful of added changes.
Get ready to live Relive your worst nightmare at Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights, because this year, Freddy's losing a backlot. Now save up to $20 with Coke Zero. It tastes so much like Coke, it's scary.
For the 2008 event, Universal kept the lineup relatively the same, with Texas Chainsaw and Friday the 13th returning with the same maze as the prior year. Freddy Krueger also returned this time around as the central icon of the event, and in a brand new maze titled A Nightmare on Elm Street. Home Sweet Hell. For this iteration, the maze was grander in scale, covering more of the franchise than the prior year's attraction, starting at the facade. This time being 1428 Elm Street. The maze was a sort of homecoming for Freddy Krueger, covering multiple scenes from the original film. The latter part of the maze still featured some of the scenes from the prior year's attraction, but did incorporate more grander elements, such as the giant Freddy snake and soul food scenes from the fourth film. Last on the maze lineup for the 2008 event, the House of Horrors saw a slight overlay with Universal's House of Horrors, Meet the Strangers, which added the titular characters from the 2008 thriller into the existing maze. The terror tram for this year's event saw a slight retheme, now being called the Nightmare Tour, and featured Freddy Krueger as the main antagonist. The plot of the tram this year was centered around a nightmare version of the backlot where Freddy took control and unleashed some of his minions, including, once again, Norman Bates, Jason Voorhees, and Leatherface. Characters such as Chop Top from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and Nightmare Dolls replaced Jack and his clowns from the prior year. Not much changed, but given the popularity of the attraction and the characters it featured, not much was needed to change, making it once again one of the most sought-after attractions of the year. In terms of scare zones, 2008 upped the count to 7, with the usuals from the prior 2 years once again making a return. Zombies were back in New York in The Dead Shall Rise, and Deadwood returned over on Western Street. Antique ghosts filled London Street in the dark streets of London, and the Black Death returned to Baker Street. The lower lot saw chainsaw-wielding pigs in Revenge of the Pigs, with a similar layout to last year's zone. New for the year, by the front gates, The Nightmare Begins saw a chrome version of Freddy Krueger hiding among the fountain statues, while the Freddy Fly Girls made their HHN debut as you entered the park. The other new scare zone, the strangers saw the titular characters of the film stalking guests as they exited the House of Horrors attraction. For this year, the show count was reduced to 3, seeing the return of Chucky's Insult Emporium, SlaughterWorld, and Bill and Ted's to the event. Just as popular, if not more, than the 2007 event, HHN 2008 continued an upward trend for the event, putting up respectable numbers in terms of attendance when compared to the established favorite, Knott's Halloween Haunt. Universal had a hit on their hands with Halloween Horror Nights, and if trends in the horror market at the time indicated properly, it would only get bigger from here. After years of failed attempts, Universal Studios Hollywood had discovered a formula that would revolutionize the haunt industry forever. And best of all, for Universal Studios, this was only the beginning. Now available, exclusive designs fit for any horror fan at Thrill Seeker Network shop online. Show off your fear in style and save 10% off your first purchase with the coupon code below.